Alright, so we're going to go over our study guide. So in this one I'm asking you to describe what transformation happened and then write the rule for what happened. So if you look, F started here on the left and now F prime is kind of here in the middle. So what actually happened is that it moved 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, and it ended up going 1 down. So this is a translation. So it's a translation 4 right and 1 down. So if I'm trying to write the rule, so I'm saying I have this original point xy and I'm changing it so that it looks like this. So if I'm going to the right, my x value is getting bigger. And in this case, since it's going to the right 4, it's going to get bigger by 4. And then my y value, since it's going down, it's going to get smaller. It's going to get smaller by 1. So that is my rule. Alright. So on this one, basically, I'm just trying to figure out, are these going to be congruent or similar, or neither of those? So if I look, I ask myself, are they the same size and shape? If they are identical, meaning they're the exact same size and shape, they are congruent. If they are the same shape but not the same size, they are similar. In this case, they are actually congruent. And I know this because the image is a, depends on which way you go, it's either 270 degrees clockwise rotation or a 90 degrees counterclockwise rotation. So either way, so I either went around 3 times this way, so 90, 180, and 270, or I went the opposite direction and went 90 degrees this way. Alright, so either way. But they'll get me in the same quadrant of the graph. And because of that, they'll actually be congruent. They're going to actually line up when I do this. Alright, so in this one, basically what I'm saying is I'm starting with point S, which is at negative 1, 7. So negative 1, 7 would be right here. And it's saying that I'm going to S prime, which is at negative 4, 5, which is right here. And what I'm asking is basically how I'm moving, and then if I do the same movement to point 6, 4, where I'll actually end up. So if I look at these two, to get from S to S prime, I'd have to go 1, 2, 3 to the left, so I'm getting 3 smaller. And I'd have to go down 2. So if I look at the other point that they want me to do, so 6, 4, which is right here. If I do the same thing, if I go 3 to the left and then 2 down, I end up at this point right here, which is at 3 and positive 2. Now there is another way you could have done this. So you could have actually taken these directions and written a rule. So if I say I'm going 3 to the left, that would be x minus 3. If I'm going 2 down, that would be y minus 2. And then actually do this to the point. So if I took the new point which they had, which was 6, 4, if I take and subtract 3 from the x value, I'll get my new value of 3. If I subtract 2, I'm going to get 2. And again, that's that same point. You could also do the same thing, finding the distance between S and S prime. But since I gave you the graph, there's no reason not to use it. Alright, so I want to know all the ones that create congruent figures, which means the same size and shape. Now remember, the only one that changes the size is a dilation. So it's the only one that does not create congruent figures. It creates similar figures because they are alike but not identical, because they are the same shape but not the same size. Alright, so we actually kind of talked about this one briefly. If I'm in this quadrant right here, if I rotated 90 degrees clockwise, I'd end up here. If I went 180 degrees, I'd end up here. And if I went one more, I would get 270. So again, this was clockwise. But if I actually go the other direction, so if I went this way, 90 degrees, I'll end up in this quadrant. So it is also the same as going 90 degrees counterclockwise. Right? So you should have picked both 90 degrees counterclockwise and 270 degrees clockwise. Alright, so on this one we are trying to figure out the scale factor, so how much bigger or smaller it's getting. There are two answer choices that I know cannot be true, because if I look at this picture, it is getting smaller. So I know this because the blue picture here has prime marks, which tell me it's the ending picture, which is smaller. So that means I need to multiply by something less than 1. So the answers of 2 and 3 don't even make sense. So it has to either be 1/3 or 1/2. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick any point that I can easily tell where it is, both in the original and in the image. So if you look, I'm going to use y right here. So I'm going to use y and y prime. So the point y is at -2, 2. The point y prime is at -1, 1. So I'm asking myself how I'm getting from -2 to -1 or 2 to 1. I'm picking the x's or the y's. I'm going to pick the y's just because they're positive numbers more than anything else. So I'm going to pick the y's to look at. Alright, so remember guys, we're going to set up a fraction. It's going to be the new over the old. So the new y value is 1. The old y value is 2. So we get our answer of 1/2. So what this is saying is that this blue picture is half of the size of the black picture. Right. So you could actually explain the same thing, compared the y's, to say that it would be 1/2. Alright, so in this one, guys, it's easier to deal with the points. So I do want you to actually write the points in here. Alright, so, and remember, these are just apostrophes, the little prime marks that I'm just using apostrophes. So basically what I'm saying is I'm taking this and I'm dilating it by a scale factor of 0.5. So that means I'm going to take every value and multiply it by 0.5. So if I have e, which is at -8, 4, I'm going to take -8 and multiply it by 0.5, and I'm going to take 4 and multiply it by 0.5. So don't forget, there's a calculator up here, you can do that. So if I do, I actually don't need to worry about the negative, but if I wanted to, I could put that in here. So 8 times 0.5 will give me 4. Alright, so the signs will stay the same. Since it was -8, it'll be -4. And if I do the same thing to 4, I'll get 2. Basically what's happening is it's taking half of all of the values. The signs stay the same, but it's taking half of all the values. So half of 2 would be 1, and half of -6 would be -3. So then I'm going to graph this. So I've got -4, +2 right here for E. I got 3, 4 for F. Don't forget the prime marks, I almost did. And then G will be at 1, -3, which is right here. And then I can use my line tool if I want to connect these, make it easy on myself. And that's it. Alright, so on this one I'm reflecting over the y-axis, so I need to make sure that this y-axis is in between my original and my image. Okay, so it needs to be in between my original and my image. So remember, reflection just means it's the same distance on the other side of the line. So if I look, L is 2 to the left of this line, so L prime is going to be 2 to the right. So it'll be right here. K is 3 to the left, so K prime will be 3 to the right. And then J is 8 to the left, so J prime will be 8 to the right. Alright, so I asked for you to write out the new points and then the rule. So if I look at these, so I'm going to put them in the same order as the original there. So J prime is at positive 8, 4. K prime is at 3, 1. And L prime is going to be at 2, 8. So then I want to write the rule for this. So what I'm saying is if I have x and y, I'm changing it so that it looks like this. So when I went over the y, one piece stayed the exact same. So if I compare like j to j prime, the y value stayed the exact same. So it's still going to be y. But then the x value changed sign. So what we're saying is that the x value changed to the opposite. So remember, when you're doing reflections, whatever you reflect over that axis, that value stays the same, and the other value switches to the opposite, which we notate just by putting it negative. So even though it went from negative to positive, it is switching to the opposite. All right. And here is our last question. So remember, there's a couple things that you kind of have to ask yourself here. First thing is whether the x and y values will flip. So I'm just going to make some notes here. So remember, we have to ask ourselves if the x and y's will flip. So since I'm going 90 degrees, the answer to that will be yes, they are going to flip. And then we need to figure out what are the signs. And this is based off of where it ends up on the graph. So we need to figure out where it's going to end up. So if I'm looking at my picture here, sorry, let me put that down there. I'm going 90 degrees counterclockwise according to this. Remember, a clock goes around this direction. So counterclockwise would be going this way. And this is 90 degrees. So it's going to end up in this section right here. So if you look at it, the x values in this section are negative. So the x values are negative. And the y values are also negative. So I need to flip all of my x and y values and then change the signs so that they are negative. So I have j prime. It was an 8 and then a 4. Now it's going to be a 4 and then an 8. And then I'm going to make both the x and y's negative. I'm going to do the same thing for k prime. So I'm going to flip them. So it'll be a 1 and then a 3 and make both the x and y negative. And do the same thing for L. I'm going to flip the 8 and the 2 and then make them both negative. When I do that, I can go ahead and graph the new picture. So if I graph it, I'll have j at -4, -8. So it'll be down here. K will be at -1, -3. And L will be at -8 and -2. So it's actually going to be on top of this arrow right here. And then I'm going to connect them. So make sure that you flipped your x and y, because otherwise it will look like your picture's not turned correctly. So it will turn the whole thing.